Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah with the Midwest Writing Center. And today, so format, I always end up doing format last and it doesn't make any sense. Format of the show, I'm going to interview an expert in a field. Today's is Val Sibila. I will give you that bio in a moment. Then Val will take off. We will do updates on the Midwest Writing Center and a free write. So Val Sibila is a lyric. I don't know how to say any of these words.
Lyric coloratura soprano.
Val Sibila is a lyric
Coloratura.
Coloratura.
Yes.
We're going to call it close enough. Soprano. Zia has finished her Master of Music program studying under Dr. Mary Schiller. So her stage roles at CIM have been Noemi in Massenet's Cendrillon. Totally, it can't be English.
You want me to read
it? First Witch in Ernest Bloch's Macbeth, and scenes as Amy in Little Women, Susanna in, can you say this one?
Le Notte di Figaro?
Not at all where I was going to go. We're gonna skip ahead. Val is a member of the Old Stone Singers and has a full studio of voice and piano students that tell me that's Chagrin Valley.
Yes.
Okay, Chagrin Valley Music. He achieved a Bachelor of Music from Kent State University. I have questions about that as a separate thing. Okay. Defying the rules and expectations of gender in the music community, Val hopes that being open and unapologetic about their gender fluid identity will contribute to the progression and constant evolution of opera culture. Z hopes to be an inspiration to those who think they must homogenize themselves, exhibiting that true authenticity in music and artistry can only be achieved through exposing every fiber of the heart and soul. And that is why you're the greatest person. Thank you for being here. I know going, publicly everywhere online and letting the world in on who you are is not the easiest thing in the world. So I'm super grateful to have you here, especially because of your vulnerability.
Thank you.
Whew. Okay, so first, easy question. How did you get into opera?
So it's actually kind of funny because I thought that I wanted to do musical theater all through high school. That was like my goals, and I was trying to audition for schools that focused on that in like New York and stuff. Then because undiagnosed ADHD, procrastinated on all my college applications. Last resort, I could only apply for Kent State. But that's okay, it worked out. And then I figured, I'll do, the state school, the cheaper school, save money on my undergrad education. And then, then I'll focus on finding the right school and the right teacher for me for the master's program. So yeah, I ended up going to Kent Stark State, which is the regional campus. And they did have 2 years of the music program there. And then you can continue and finish at the state campus. So that saved me a lot of money, and it's great. I ended up only having, less than 10 grand in loans by the end of my undergrad, which is pretty good.
I mean, that's awesome, but how sad that we're like, whoa.
So, and it was, it had its ups and downs and things that could have been improved upon, but it was pretty good for what it was. And yeah, I started there, and I just auditioned for the general like voice performance, because I didn't really know like the musical theater specific degree was the state campus only, and I was kind of undecided at that point too. Like I wasn't fully committed to the musical theater thing. And then I started training and realizing that opera is this awesome thing that exists. And I had done like the solo and ensemble before, so I had done like studied classical music before a little bit, but didn't really get into opera until college.
That's wild. I assumed that you were into it as a kid for some reason.
Yeah, I was always into singing, but not necessarily opera.
I don't know why I thought that. It feels like it's something that requires 40 years of experience before you can start or something. I don't know. It seems
So
very,
if you're 40 years old, then it's already too late for you.
it seems
Unless you're a
really
contralto.
inaccessible to me for some reason, but like it's not. It's just something that I think we see as very hoity-toity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's something I'll interrogate on my own later. Okay, that's really cool. So you play piano, right?
Yeah.
You said you had experience with classical music. What were you doing other than singing?
So my dad is a pianist. He mostly does like rock music, but he kind of got me and my siblings started on playing around on the piano, and then we
Didn't
wanted
know that.
lessons. Yeah.
Oh, for the audience, I am very close friends with Val's older sibling. So in my head, I know Val really well, but in real life, I don't. Uh, okay.
We lived together for like 4 months.
I have ADHD. Um, anyway, okay, keep going. I can't
Okay.
believe I didn't know your dad was a pianist.
Yeah. So he kind of got us started on the whole music thing. I think I started just voice though, or flute. At some point there was a flute. I can't. Time doesn't exist in my brain. I don't
Time's
know
not real.
which came first.
Time's not real.
But so yeah, we took lessons. I was more into the voice thing. My sibling was more into the piano thing. And they're both into art and writing and everything, but they kind of went the writing art route more than music, and then I went the music route more in the long run. Yeah.
It's pretty silly we have to choose, but that's okay.
I don't have to, but
Okay,
you want to
so-
monetize one, you gotta find your focus.
right. Funny that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first time I ever experienced anything to do with opera, I think this is just straightforward, the facts. Like I knew the term "It Ain't Over Till the Fat Lady Sings," and I assume that has to do with opera, but I also haven't like seen that. I was required in a college class to go to an opera. And I sure didn't want to. I think I ended up being required to do 2 or 3. I didn't want to. Thankfully, it was either discounted or free because we were students, because it was required, whatever that situation is with college. And I think I probably assumed it would just be like I would have no idea what's going on, and I would be bored. Definitely thought I was going to be bored. And I know somebody had told me in advance that there were subtitles, and I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. So I want to talk about that a little too.
Okay.
It was a bit like maybe you'll understand this or maybe you won't. When I moved to Seattle, everyone talked about Fred Meyer all the time. Are you familiar with Fred Meyer?
I'm not sure that I am, actually. I'm not good with remembering names, though, so.
You don't need to. This is what was really frustrating. I kept asking people what Fred Meyer was, and they would just say, it's Fred Meyer, which is not helpful. Yeah. It's like a Target, but bigger. That's what it is.
Oh, it's a store.
Yeah, it's just.
Okay, I don't know who that guy is, but.
No, it's got a grocery section. It's got a car section. It's like a really fancy Walmart, but it's not fancy in terms of anything else. It's just a huge department store.
What does that have to do with opera?
When I asked people to tell me about opera, they would be like, it's opera is how that came back. But also what it has to do with is that I have ADHD. So nobody would explain it to me. And it's really not my favorite thing to go into something blindly. I like to pretend that that's my thing, but it's not. Come on. Thankfully, this was something that I went into blindly and had a good experience with. If you asked me today, if I wanted to shell out the money to go to an opera, I'd probably say no, because I,
Expensive.
could buy groceries or something. That says more about my life than my interests. But I'm really grateful that I've seen an opera. And what's really interesting to me about opera in particular, and one of the reasons that I'm so excited to talk about it, I know it was really long-winded for a question, is because there is a narrative form that seems common, with my whole 3 plays under my belt,
Mhm.
3 performances under my belt. What do you call them?
Performances.
Um,
Operas.
and it's something that I don't see anywhere else. It's okay if you can't answer this, but can you kind of detail like a typical opera storyline? I know there are lots of stories, and then I'm going to ask about language.
Okay. I mean, it can be anything really, depending on who writes it. Typically, it's a few hours long. There are some operas, like the Ring Cycle, that goes for days.
Wait, what?
It's literally a 4-day experience to see the entire production. It's like
Does it like?
you watch like for 4 days, you stay in one place and then you go to the opera, and it's like each act is like 4 hours long or something. It's insane.
That's so cool.
Yeah. um,
Thank you for
but
telling me that.
typically, it's one opera is about 2 to 3 hours, depending on who's producing it and if they made any cuts and things like that. Um, and the music copyright is public domain after like 70 years post death of the composer or something like that. So you can edit the opera, like make cuts as you need and things like that. And you can access all the music online through IMSLP, which is a international music
What was it called? I'm going to put this in the
something.
chat.
IMSLP.
IMSLP. I'm going to mute myself while
What
you
all the
text.
letters stand for, but yeah, you can access any classical music scores, download them, and print them out on that site. Where was I going with that? Opera. So usually it's about 3 acts, typically 3, 4, 5 acts, depending. And often there's an intermission, there's an overture. I don't know. It depends. Like there's opera buffa, which are like comic operas. Then there's tragédie lyrique, which is a French tragedy. Um, there's all different types. There's dramatic ones. There's funny ones. There's ones that are a mix of both. I don't know how far you want me to get into all of that.
I mean, so one of the things which I maybe should have warned you about is that I kind of like to go into these into interviews as a layman. I mean, I would be a layman anyway, but I think if I can ask really basic questions, that'll help other people also form that base understanding. So anything you want to share is awesome, but my next sort of pressing question is so first, people must be writing new operas, right?
Yeah.
That seems really obvious, but I think and this may not be a stereotype, this could just be me. We have this idea, like you said, public domain, that operas are really old. And that's one of the things that makes them fancy. But it doesn't make sense that an art form would die while people are using it. So
yeah. So that kind of gets into the problems with the industry and how a lot of it's run by old white men that want to keep the status quo. They want to keep producing the same. We call it the canon, which are like this, old dead white dudes, like Beethoven, Mozart, all those composers everyone knows, rather than producing new music written by people of today. I just want to keep pumping out the same shows that everybody already knows because it draws the audiences and it gets donations. But it doesn't progress the art form.
Yeah, I was going to say we as if anyone knew who I was talking about. But we do see that a lot, I think, in arts nonprofits
Mhm.
and small areas where people are like, well, we need the money, so we're going to do the thing that people want rather than um, giving folks new content and inspiring them to be invested in the world that is alive and active, which is really heartbreaking. And that's true, I think, probably of all media except for like what's hot. Because there are musicals that are hot, there are pop radio, there's pop fiction, it's just really disappointing.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I'm a little bit glad to hear that it's not just me, not just you,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Do you see, I realize you don't live in like LA, but do you see any movement of that in like big cities or anything?
Yeah, I mean, there are companies that try to focus on new works. Um, there's, producers that are usually younger producers that are, bringing in these new works and performing them and being more diverse in their casting. Um, there's some great operas that have recently come out that really tackle like social issues. Um, and I've noticed that like more progressive cities will do that more, like Seattle Opera. They do some of the classics, but they also do some of the newer works and they focus on a lot of diversity in their cast. Um, whereas the Metropolitan Opera in New York has been kind of infamous for being very non-progressive. They're trying, I guess, but
But that makes sense. That's People don't like to break from what's established as successful.
Mhm.
It's just kind of crappy for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know new stuff exists. Does
Mhm.
new stuff exist in English? Like, are
Yes.
people okay?
Actually, I would say most of the newer operas are in English.
Yeah,
At
I
least the
don't
ones
mean
being
to.
produced in America.
That's what I
Yes.
was going to say. I don't mean to assume that other
New
countries aren't
composers are
still.
Americans. Like,
You're not
I
allowed to
guess,
write an opera
the
unless it's for me.
composers back in the day that lived in Europe, they knew all these different languages. But you
So,
had to really know a language well in order to write it, an entire opera in it. So most of the operas coming out now are in English that are being produced in America. I
right.
don't really know about operas that are
So
coming out in
what's
other
the
countries.
difference between an opera and a musical?
Um, so there's kind of like a lot of different ways you can compare and contrast of what's opera, what is not. But I think like the most simple way to explain it is to just say that like operatic singing is unmiked.
Oh,
It should be completely unmiked. The architecture is built in such a way, and it's been designed for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years to continually improve on the voice being able to carry throughout an entire hall completely unmiked. Now that doesn't say there isn't sometimes opera performances that are mic'd, like say like Montserrat Caballé and Freddie Mercury performing together in a giant arena outside. Obviously, they mic'd her, but in general, like in an opera house, there will be no mics, no amplification of the voice. It's all naturally amplified by the way that we use harmonics within our own bodies to create the space needed to.
that's so powerful.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sound science.
yeah, that's really cool. I'm gonna not ask questions about that because it'll go over my head and it'll get me off track. Okay, so the barest minimum is the difference is how you use your voice.
Yeah.
Are there other things that are usually separate?
Like musical style and storylines can be different a lot, but yeah, a lot of it's just like the different types of singing. Um, the musical theater singers use a lot of belting, um, and Sprechstimme. Well, I don't know if there's a different, less fancy term, but it's like speak singing,
Mm-hmm.
um, where you're just kind of start shouting
Yeah.
on rhythm, and it's part of the vocal line. Um, you don't really do that in opera because that doesn't
Like what the Bare Naked
really.
Ladies do.
Yeah.
Well, they do.
There is sometimes dialogue in opera though, because there's like the Magic Flute has a lot of actual dialogue in it.
Hmm.
It's unsung, but
Um,
most of the time though, usually it's recitative, which is you sing the spoken line, in a speech pattern.
that sounds like it would be really hard to accomplish.
Yes.
Like, I feel like my body doesn't want to do those back and forth.
Well, it's either usually one or the other. Either the opera has just dialogue and arias, or both. I guess sometimes it does have arias, recitative, and dialogue. Most operas, speaking on classic operas, right? Most of them are recit and aria and no dialogue.
You said the storylines are different between musicals and opera. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Um, hmm. Sorry, I don't know how to specifically say how to simplify it without like,
Yeah, getting into the weeds.
yeah. um, I guess opera plots are known for being ridiculous, and there are a lot of like tropes that traditionally are repeated. Um, you have like your like characters a lot are very similar, especially with like we're talking about like Mozart operas, right? You have your uh soubrette, soprano, has a lot of coloratura. She's like the maid, or the maybe some of lower status, but is actually this really strong female character. Um, you have your like Cherubino. He's a pants role, but he's sung by a mezzo soprano. Um, and he's like a young, pubescent boy, um, who gets into all sorts of trouble with the ladies, and then usually there's the count, or somebody of high status who's like a baritone, um, and then his wife will be like a lyric soprano. She'll be a little older, and just stuff like that. And like the bass is usually the villain. The tenor is usually like the heroic love interest of the lead soprano. Is like it kind of always follows this pattern. Not always, but yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, that's what tropes are. We see them over and over and over again. And that's really interesting. I guess I probably am, indoctrinated enough into, Western culture to probably pick up on that. But I wouldn't, if you had asked me, I wouldn't have been like, oh man, bass, baritone, bad guy. Um, so that's maybe not cool, but it's cool.
Hmm.
I would guess that has been at least, or is being messed with newer operas, because that seems, without mincing words, heteronormative. Um,
Yeah.
do you see that? Do you get to engage with newer operas very often?
Um well, I'm fresh out of conservatory, right? And it's a very traditionally focused conservatory that I went to. So I would say we mostly focused on the canon. We did do a series of, it was kind of an interesting project. There was 4 mini operas, and they used the students from the composition program wrote mini operas for us. So that was
That's
kind of
really
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I know I used to work with no, not that. I just happened to work with somebody who went to a master's program for playwriting. Uh, and so, they put on their student productions, and, the students of each different, the playwriting students wrote the plays and the acting students acted them, and on and on. In the things that are logical. And I think that's gotta be much more, it's gotta be much more exciting to be part of what makes the piece live.
Mhm.
I guess that's what performance is in general.
Mhm.
Okay, so how is it going through such a traditional program, as a forward-thinking person?
I definitely, I'll have to go out and say that I've, you know, had to deal with a lot of misgendering all the time. Um, and yeah, there were some people who were very good about it, and some people who were just acted like my gender identity didn't exist, and I'm a female, and that's what I am. So I had to deal with that a lot, in both students and teachers, unfortunately. But I don't know.
I hate that.
Yeah.
Hate that. I forgot. I said I would let you go at right now. Do you have any last
Oh,
thoughts for us?
I mean, I can go for like 5 or 10 minutes if you want.
Well, what do you want? What do you want laymen to know about the opera? How would you get me to go to the opera?
Um, I would say, I guess, don't just believe all the stereotypes about it. Try it out. Like if you don't like the old forms of opera, you could try newer operas. They are being produced. You just have to find them. Um, and the more that people engage and pay money to go see those new productions, the more
The more they're going to
they'll
be.
get produced. So, I mean, I really support, you know, current artists, and would like that to continue to thrive because that's how the art form continues to live. And if it's just, if they're always focusing on the same old, then it will die out, and we don't want that.
I
So,
think we should do a field trip to Chicago, but you have to do the research because I don't know how. um, okay, so it's also something that I think I would probably say about theater in general is that, like, if you can watch a movie, you can watch a play. I think
Mhm.
there's some idea that it's different, and I mean, it
Yeah.
is.
Mhm.
One is live.
Yeah.
Um, that's the primary difference, though. It's not like you can't
Mhm.
get up to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. And you can usually find them, like, if you don't want to have to go all the way to the opera house, there are a lot of blue stage productions that you can see that have been filmed and put online.
How would I find those?
Um,
Sorry, that face was about to catch.
YouTube sometimes, or if you want like really professional recordings, you can. It does cost money. You can pay for the Met Opera um, streaming service. It's like
So
any streaming service, like Netflix. It has you pay a certain amount per month, and then you get to just watch all the productions they put on that.
if I wanted to
Sometimes you
look it
can
up
find
on
them on YouTube too.
YouTube, what search terms would I use?
I guess just kind of just to figure out which opera you want to see and look it up on there and see if there's a good recording of it. Um, I mean, you can look up, you know, Google operas, like the most famous operas, and then kind of look through the synopsis and see if there's one that you think is really interesting that you want to watch.
That's fair.
Um,
I love that too because I was sort of fishing for you to tell me what to do, and it's much better for you to not tell me what to do, like as a human being.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know what you're interested in. Here are ways to find what you're interested in. That is much better. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze and it's coming at a rough rate.
Yeah.
What do you love about opera?
For me, it's just like I like watching it, but even more so, I love performing it. It just takes everything within you, and you just like become this character and become, for me at least, you become what they're feeling, and you just let it out and you just sing it, and it takes so much preparation, but then when you perform, it's really about getting out of your own head and just telling the audience the story, showing them your soul.
That's beautiful. I know too that there are like a lot of acting classes, acting teachers talk about like using your body and not just your face. I imagine that that's unavoidable in opera if you're doing so much with your body just to create volume.
Yeah.
And I will actually, would you be able to provide me, you don't have to do this right now, with a link to one of your performances? I was going to say, I think I still have the link to your, your final performance in school, but I don't know if it's still there because it's not currently live.
They're still all on my Facebook page.
Okay, cool.
Recorded version, so they should still be available. Do you want me to send you the link?
I can do it now. No, you told me how to find it.
Yeah.
And the reason, I mean, I have a lot of reasons for being interested, but the reason in particular that I'm interested, that I reached out to you, is because seeing you perform was a powerful experience for me, and I wasn't even there. And that's wild, right? And that's why we come to art. It's because it affects us.
Yeah, I did a lot for my recital, my final recital. I did. I tried to focus less on the traditional things. And I did a couple, like the Schubert I did, and then I did a Verdi aria. But then, especially the second half, well, there was the 3 Rachmaninoff songs. That's, I guess, traditional. But then at the end, I did 2 arias from modern operas written by, one was written by a trans composer, and the opera is about a trans woman and her journey. And then another one was written for a trans singer. It's actually written for a trans tenor, but it is said in the program, like, it has to be cast by a trans person, but they can be non-binary as well. So I wanted to perform that as well. That's about, it's actually a historical drama about, somebody in history who is actually living as a trans man. So that was cool. And then I wrote my own piece at the end, about my personal journey in coming out and being myself as a fluid person. So yeah. Maybe if you wanted to focus on one video to share, it would be one of those 2.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, thank you so much. I know you have places to be, but I'm so delighted to have you, and I'm probably gonna poke you a lot with questions as a personal thing and not a work thing. Thank you so much. You speak so beautifully. You can tell how much you love it.
Thank you.
Go have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Now, for folks who are still with me, thanks for hanging out. I'm really excited. I have a lot more questions about opera because I understand that it has what Val said, that it's characterized by being ridiculous, and I'm really curious about what that looks like for comedy, because I think for me, all I'm familiar with is really ridiculous tragedies or like classic stories, but with more drama. So that'll be really fun to explore, and I will drop those links to Val's performances in the chat and in the description of the YouTube video. But I don't have more to say about opera because it is not my area of expertise. So I'm just going to drop information on what's up at the Midwest Writing Center. This weekend, tomorrow, so register right now. The Iron Pen contest starts. It's 5 p.m. The link at 5 p.m. The prompt goes live. That's 5 p.m. Central, so that'll be 6 p.m. if you're on the East Coast, 4 or 3 if you are west of here. 3 if you are Pacific time, 4 if you are Rocky Mountains. And that is a 24-hour writing contest. Registration is $10, and you have 24 hours to respond to the prompt as well as you can in whatever genre you prefer. The genres available are fiction, poetry, and nonfiction. There are very few guidelines. We ask that you not take too many pages because we have to read them. You can register as many times as you like. You can submit as much as you want as long as you register. It's really fun. I have participated many times. I don't think I can participate now as a staff member. I had a dream that I did, which I don't know what that means. I had a dream that I participated and I did well. It's a really, really good exercise as far as like forcing you to get creative because you have such limited time. So you submit your work by 5 p.m. on Saturday. And then we will announce winners on March 8th. First place winners will, in addition to their medals and certificates, will get a cash prize first time on this 15th anniversary of the contest. And then we'll have a reading on March 11th. That'll be hybrid. So you can come down to the Midwest Writing Center for the reading, or you can watch online. I will be streaming that to Facebook. And that's a really good one too. At the reading, this is something I forgot to mention, that anyone who registers has the chance to win free tuition to the Collins Writers Conference, which we all know by now is my favorite event of the year. We get really, really incredible, talented writers who are just the best in their field to come and teach us what they know. That's a $400 value. So that could be absolutely free if you just win. That's a drawing. That's not for winning. Anyone who registers has the opportunity to win that free tuition. Okay. Then next Thursday, I'm super, super excited because this is one of the topics that I want to work with and need to know more about. But Ida Zalilian will be back with a snapshots to stories workshop. It's how to start a story, starting with a moment or a scene or a snapshot and turning it into a larger work. That'll be really, really incredible. Let me check the price. I don't have that in front of me. I apologize. I believe it's $40 for members, but it might be $30 for members. So like I said, please bear with me. This is a little embarrassing. $30 for members, $40 for non-members. So scholarships are also available. And Ada Zalilian is just such a talented writer, such a talented reader. I meant teacher. All of those things. I've seen her, I interviewed her on Write More Light. You can check that out on YouTube. But also, I took her class that she did with us before, which was on writing cultural stories. And I've read her work. She's just so talented. This is really a steal to get to take a class with her for $30. Other upcoming things we have going on. The Young Emerging Writers internship is accepting applications. The Great River Writers Retreat is accepting applications. We have our collaboration with Nahant Marsh I have the dates here. I remembered my calendar this time. On March 12th, there will be a youth writing workshop over there at Nahant Marsh at 1 p.m. With Maddie Young, who I also interviewed on Write More Light to talk about that collaboration. It'll be really cool. And then Aubrey Ryan, whose book is not within reach, will be teaching a poetry workshop at Mayhem March on nature poetry, on nature writing. And then anyone who has participated in any of these workshops will be invited to attend a reading on April 16th at Ross Talks. It'll also be our celebration of National History Month. It's going to be really wonderful. For the young emerging writers, I want to mention that's for any writer aged 15 to 19. It's a paid internship, and those participants also get tuition to the writers conference is covered for them. Yeah, so I was going to ask that you put together some scaffolding for a story in opera form. I don't feel like that's really fair because I don't feel like I have the notes on what that means. And if I can't do it, I can't request it. So I'd like you to give yourself 5 minutes to just journal, just do it comes. I'd like, if you need a little more focus, think about opera, think about the canon, think about how that is changing, how you can participate in its changing or in its staying the same. And as always, please write more light into your life.